Lil, can you throw that last diagram up that you had? So this was another. I believe this was the actual brew. Oh, okay, she's working on that now. There you go.
Yeah.
So I believe this was the brew because it has a lot less diversity.
Right.
And so this was what came out of it after you did a 24 or 48 hour brew. You probably don't remember.
I've done too much since then. I think I stuck with 24 hours just for simplicity's sake, so I could, tell everyone this is exactly, 24 hours.
Got you, which makes a lot of sense. And then scroll down a little bit more, Lil, and we'll look at the graph showing the variation between. It was still keep going. It just had little bars. So it had the 3 different tests. There we go. That's the one. Okay, so the top one obviously is your Verma extract with incredible diversity. And then the next one, which is down slightly from that, was the Verma Brew, I believe, correct?
The extract, yeah.
So we had just the straight Vermicompost, the extract, which were very similar, and then lastly was the brew. There we go.
Right. Yep.
But look at that. Look at the level of diversity that was lost when you started eating foods. And I think, this goes back to how important it is, especially for people that are just getting into this or want to get into this, that they need to understand that diversity is like cash. It's king. And so you really should limit your food sources during extraction or brewing. You can always add them in at the application without affecting those microorganisms. But if you don't have the diversity, and this goes back to understanding soil food web product or soil food web theory, which is that the more diverse bacteria you have, when the protozoa eat it, the more diverse pantries, cytoplasm, and everything else that is released in the rhizosphere for the plant to pull up. So again, when it comes to bacterial species, you always want to go as diverse as you possibly can. So that was just my little rant.
One thing to consider too that this data does not show, because we're only looking at bacteria here. So in a compost tea, what we're trying to do is get a bacterial boom. And with that bacterial boom, we're providing foods for their predators, which is going to be protozoa. And so we're trying to get a protozoan boom. And so what this chart doesn't show is the protozoa. And that's what I'm actually, through a brew, I'm trying to get more protozoa going, because if I were to once I make an extract, I've got some protozoa in there, usually some flagellates and a good amount of testate amoeba. But then once I start brewing it, because of the air and the water, flagellates really, all of these need moisture, but flagellates really take off more with more moisture. And so I'm getting an increase in flagellates especially, but also testate amoeba. So both of these protozoa is what I'm trying to get an increase of, so that I'm getting those out into the soil, because normally what soils are going to have a good amount of bacteria, but they're lacking the higher life forms, either their friends, fungi, or their predators, protozoa, and things like that.
Exactly. And that goes to the understanding that when, especially if you add sugars in your brew to bloom the bacteria, prey predator comes in and those protozoa go nuts. And I believe the rule of thumb is that protozoa production happens from about hour 24, although some would say hour 20, through about hour 30 to hour 36. Is that in your understanding as well?
From my experience, that's what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, we're just trying to give the audience as much information as possible to prevent them from having, a bad experience, because that's always been the worst in this industry, is that word of mouth is rule, right? So if one person does a bad job, they're going to bitch and say it doesn't work for probably the rest of their life. Whereas if they have success, it's not like they're going to run around waving the flag saying, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this. So, we want to make sure that people that are trying these things out are doing it with the best rules of thumb or standard operating procedures they can have, so they don't have a bad experience, and then hopefully they have a successful experience where others start to question, hey, what did you do to get those kinds of results? So thank you for clarifying those kinds of things. It's important.
Right. Yeah. And I'm always, anytime I'm talking to people about if they're wanting to make a compost tea, I'm always telling them to err on the side of not going too long. It's way better to get closer to an extract and not even brew than to go over.
Agreed. And let's face it, extracts are just so much easier to work with because you don't have to worry about that crash. So after hour 36 or 40, depending on temperature, which is a real big issue, ideally you want to be brewing at room temperature. But that's not always possible, especially in warm weather climates, and then obviously late spring, summer, and early fall is going to be very hot. So, but that being said, if you go past that threshold, what happens is the biological oxygen demand, or BOD, gets so high that the whole thing crashes. It goes anaerobic, and now you're spreading ciliates in the soil, and that's very detrimental. We don't want to do that.
Generally, what I find is that I just lose life more than going anaerobic. I just lose life, and there's just nothing there.
Yeah, very limited bacteria.
Yeah,
and people should understand though that still has viability. The problem is it's mobile. So when you apply that product, if you apply it and then add water to it after, or it rains or whatever, what's going to happen is all that cytoplasm just washes down into the lower earth and it can't be absorbed by the plants. So that's why, again, what we're talking about here is putting out a extract or a tea that can actually stick and hold through biofilm and then provide long-term benefit to the soil. I don't know about you, Troy, but I've found over the years that a lot of my clients, I get them to a certain point and then I basically wash my hands and say, hey, you're all set. You don't need me anymore. Just don't use any synthetics. And, your soil food web is up and running.